Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle, where we tell it like it is. Friends, Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion with WeAreSC columnists, staff writers, historians, and editorial board. We start off with the pregame show, where we introduce our panel members for this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and then give you the latest USC Trojans football news. But first, let's meet this week's panelists. Marc Kulkin, WeAreSC columnist who writes the Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, Sunday Takeaways, in addition to regular season football and basketball practice reports. Chris Arledge, former William Jewell College defensive back and team captain, and WeAreSC columnist who writes the popular column Musings with Arledge, and is a graduate of the USC Law School. Erik McKinney, editor-in-chief of WeAreSC.com, as well as columnist, senior writer, and nationally recognized recruiting analyst and USC columnist, graduate, and Greg Katz, that's me, your moderator and producer of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and a weekly WeAreSC columnist who writes the obvious and not so obvious IMHO Sunday, and an active member of the Football Writers Association of America. Before we kick off this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, here's the latest USC football news as of today's Monday evening taping. This Friday morning at 7 a.m., the 2022 Trojans will open training camp on Howard Jones Bryant Kennedy Fields in preparation for their season opener against the Rice Owls on Saturday afternoon, September 3rd, in the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. Training camp is closed to the public, but you can get all of your info by visiting WeAreSC.com. In last week's Pac-12 preseason media poll, the Trojans were picked third overall behind Utah and Oregon, respectively. Utah received 26 first-place votes and 384 total points. Oregon received 2 first-place votes and 345 total points, while the Trojans received 5 first-place votes and 341 total points. For your information, the Pac-12 North and South divisions have been eliminated for 2022. And last week, the Pac-12 came out with its preseason all-conference teams. First-team offensive Trojans included quarterback Caleb Williams, wide receivers Jordan Addison and Mario Williams, and offensive lineman Andrew Voorhees. Defensively, defensive lineman Tui Pelotu was the lone Trojans representative. Trojans running back Travis Dye was named first-team all-purpose special team choice, as well as second-team offensive selection. Offensive guard Andrew Voorhees and defensive tackle Tui Tuipulotu have been named to the Rotary Lombardi Trophy watch list. Lombardi Award goes annually to the college football offense or defensive lineman who, in addition to outstanding performance and ability, best exemplifies the character and discipline of NFL Hall of Fame head coach Vince Lombardi. Former USC All-America offensive guard Brad Buddy won the award in 1979. And a discussion point for later in the huddle, Trojans 5-star class of 2023 quarterback Malachi Nelson, Lincoln Riley's top recruit for the class of 2023, surprised many by taking an unofficial recruiting trip to Texas A&M this past weekend. Again, more perspective on that recent development during the huddle's third quarter. And a big recruiting commit will be revealed on Saturday when 4-star edge rusher Braylon Shelby of Friendswood, Texas, will choose between the Trojans and Texas. WeAreSC's Scott Schrader believes that Shelby will be a Trojan, and you can watch Braylon Shelby's official Saturday announcement on the 247 YouTube channel at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And finally, friends, WeAreSC's Inside the Trojans Huddle greatly appreciates your viewer and listenership, and we encourage those of you watching on sites like YouTube, click on the red subscriber and like buttons. It's greatly valued, and it is free. All right, it's time for the first quarter kickoff. And here's your topic. Panel, with training camp opening this Friday morning, let's get your initial thoughts on the offense and breaking down the positions of quarterback, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and offensive line. Please attach an A through F preseason letter grade to each unit. We'll start off with the quarterbacks. Marc Kulkin back with us. Good to have you back, Marc. Give us, as the leadoff hitter on the huddle, who is the quarterback situation first to give us a grade and a brief assessment?
So we have, sorry about that, guys. You get 2 quarterbacks to choose from, 2 quarterback lineup, so to speak. Caleb Williams, Miller Moss. I'm going to come in really conservative here. I'm going to give him a B+. There's a lot of talent, no question about it. Both were highly recruited. Caleb was one of the top recruits in his class. Miller was one of the top quarterback commits out of his class as well. But I'm going to go back to what Lincoln Riley said at Pac-12 Media Day. Caleb Williams has played less than half a season of football. So while, yeah, he's got a lot of talent and a lot of, I hate to use the word expectations upon him, as the season went on last year as a freshman, he kind of looked like a freshman. So we're going to find out if he's been able to graduate to a sophomore, and can he handle more complex defenses like, dropping 8 guys into coverage, and can he handle it now? So until, we see that progression, I think a B+ is a solid grade to give the quarterbacks that have limited experience.
Okay, Erik McKinney, editor-in-chief of wearesc.com, your grade, please, and brief evaluation.
It's an A. It's an A on something where I don't really want to show my work or anything. It's an interesting way to build the room, right? Caleb Williams, if you're going to talk quarterback singular in college football, there's maybe 2 guys that I take over him. If you've got the 3rd best guy coming into the season, that means a whole lot when you're talking about a starting quarterback. I think Miller Moss is a great backup. After that's kind of where I don't want to show my work, right? I don't want to know how you got this A, because boy, you talk about 3rd and 4th and 5th options where you used to look back at quarterback rooms and it's, you had, 2 first-round draft picks in the same quarterback room, or you had 4 5-star quarterbacks. You just can't build rooms like that anymore, it seems. I know Ohio State's going to kind of test that with the guys they have committed there the next few years, but I think you need to have an A starting off for you, and USC has that. They needed a quarterback. The fit obviously was there between Lincoln and Caleb Williams. I don't think there was a lot of suspense when he entered the portal where he was going to end up. But there are very few programs whose quarterback rooms I think are in better shape just because you have Caleb Williams at the top.
All right, Chris Arledge, good to have you back from your jaunt across the pond. Quarterback grade and brief explanation.
It's A. I mean, obviously, I don't know what Kulkin is doing starting us off with a B+. This is a softball. You asked him what letter grade to give the quarterbacks. USC has arguably the best quarterback in the country. Alabama and Ohio State fans might disagree, and maybe they're right, but nobody else would. I mean, to have 120-something teams that would take him. And Miller Moss is a pretty capable backup. Eric's right that if you look at the depth chart, 3, 4, they're big question marks, but everybody has question mark at number 3 or 4 on the quarterback depth chart. So it's not a problem. Caleb Williams is a superstar, and he's going to be a superstar this year. He did have some down games last year as a freshman, but if you look at his freshman numbers as a whole, they were tremendous. The kid's fantastic. He's unbelievably talented, and he has the best quarterback coach in the country coaching him. That's an A. Easy call.
That was a mighty Clay Helton call of you, just to start giving these guys the A grades right off the bat there, Chris. Welcome back.
Oh,
if you're going to say, what am I thinking? B+. The guy has played how many games of football? His own coach says there's a lot of work still left to be done. And we've got a backup that Eric pointed out. Behind that, you want to give it a solid A? I'm giving a B+. Are we really going to get into this about this?
It sounds like we are. Look, we started off on the wrong foot. You called me Clay Helton within the first 5 minutes of the show. The next hour is going to be ugly. Go ahead, Greg. Go ahead and weigh in. I'm gonna plot my revenge.
Well, okay. So while you're plotting your revenge, it sounds to me like we have a split decision here. I'm a neutral source, but here's my opinion. I think that my letter grade will be a B+.
Oh,
I think that Caleb Williams, for all the hype, had a very good early beginnings at Oklahoma, and then kind of tailed off a little bit, kind of came back in the bowl game. Miller Moss, excellent backup at this point, only getting better. But I think Caleb's got a lot to prove, and I agree with Marc on this one. And I also agree with the head coach, who says he's still got a lot of growth to have. And one thing he does have going as a challenge is he's in Los Angeles now. He's getting more pub than he had at Oklahoma, with all due respect to Sooner fans. This is a big media market. They demand a big response when he takes the field against Rice and for the balance of the game. So I'm going with a B+ myself. All right. Running backs, here we go. Chris, here's a chance to give us your evaluation of the running backs, grade, and a brief explanation, please.
Here's where I think you have a B+. I like the running backs. I think you have 3 guys that can play. You have a couple of guys that have a lot of experience. I think it's a good group. They're going to make plays. They're going to pass protect. They're going to fall forward. They're going to do all the things you want running backs to do. I don't think there's a superstar in the group. There's not a Reggie Bush or Lindell White. I'm not even sure there's a Ronald Jones. You have guys who are very good players. I don't think you have anybody who's a great player. If Raleek Brown turns out to be more of a running back than a wide receiver, and if he's a game breaker, then I think he might be, then maybe this group bumps up to an A-. But right now, I'm giving him a B+.
Okay, Kulkin, what grade are you going to give him? I'm going to hold on to my seatbelt on this one. What grade are you issuing in brief explanation?
Yeah, I'm going there too, but I'm wondering, what are we grading these guys up against? The rest of the Pac-12 running back group?
Well, I think we're looking more at where do you feel right now as the preseason training camp is about to begin. What level do you see the unit as of now?
Based on the scheme that I know Lincoln Riley wants to use, I can go B+, maybe even an A-. But again, based on how they're going to be used, we know what they've done at their previous programs. I think Travis Dye is built for this offense, just the way his running style, the type of running game that Lincoln likes to employ. Austin Jones, is he going to be the power back? I don't know. And then you got Darwin Barlow that, since he's been here, he's been injured. He's played a little bit. I think a B+ would be a very gracious grade.
Wow, you came out with gracious. That was very thoughtful. Very thoughtful.
Well, you said B+, maybe A-. So if B+ is gracious, what's A-?
Yeah, now that's an excellent.
Is it unreasonably high? I mean, what are you doing here, Colton?
Yeah,
Again, who am I grading against? Zach Charbonnet, and who's with Zach over at UCLA?
I don't pay attention to UCLA. I just pointed
Oregon State's running game. Am I grading them against Washington's running game? Utah. Right now, USC's got a B+ A- running back group.
Well, which one is it though? An A- or a B+?
B+.
Okay, fair enough. All right, Mr. McKinney, what's the letter grade here and brief explanation?
I'm gonna go D- just to force your hand to go underneath me and throw an F out there. No, B+ I think is it. I think, look, I love Travis Dye. I think he's a phenomenal back. But you have that trio there that's been there, right? Travis Dye, Austin Jones, and Darwin Barlow. I think they're capable of getting every yard that's available and maybe a few others. I don't know how capable they are in terms of long speed and just absolutely creating a big play from nothing. They're going to follow blocks. They're tough runners. They're tough to bring down if you have to tackle them 20, 30 times a game. I think Raleek Brown is what could bump this up to an A, and it's disappointing. It's always, if you expect a true freshman to play, you always hope, I guess, that they're going to get there in the spring so they can kind of ease into it and they're ready to go in the fall. I think that's kind of where the potential to jump this to that A- is if he can be that guy, if he can be that game breaker, if he can take a little swing pass that doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere and go 85 yards with it, which I do think he's capable of even as a true freshman. I think that's where this thing gets a bump. But overall, just an absolutely solid running back room. I have no issues with that. It's just, when you're talking about Jahmyr Gibbs at Alabama now, where it seemed like they may have had a shot at him in the transfer portal when the running back coach was getting figured out. That kind of guy, I'm curious to see if that kind of guy is in this group they have.
All right. Well, I will tell you that I like this running back group. There's no top end speed guy, but as far as toughness, true grit, I'll take this group and give them a B+. to begin training camp. I really like Dye. I think he's kind of a throwback to reminding me of the tailbacks under McKay. Tough, grinding Clarence Davis. Okay, most of you don't know who Clarence Davis is, but some of you do. Tough kid, and he's already proven it at Oregon. He's going to be okay. So I'll give this group a B plus. So let's move on to wide receivers. Let's go with Erik again. Erik, grade for the wide receivers and explanation.
It's an A. And it would not have been without Jordan Addison. I think this is a really deep, a really good group, but they needed that guy. We saw kind of at the end of last year, and I hate to compare the end of last year to really anything because it was just such a mess and guys were checked out and what was going on with the coaching staff and all of that. But we have seen if you don't have that lead guy, that absolute A+ talent, it gets tough, no matter if you have a bunch of good receivers. And I think, again, Caleb Williams talked about this at media day where he told his teammates, hey, we need to go get this guy. This guy's going to help us. This guy's going to help us win big games. He's going to show up and he's that kind of guy. And I think he pushes them firmly into that A because you have so many different body types. And the thing I think you have are speedy guys who can catch the ball and turn them into big gains. I don't think, Drake London, for as good as he was, that was always it. Like the yards after catch, it wasn't always there. And I think in this offense, you have, Mario Williams or Gary Bryant, some of those guys can catch it and go. And then you do still have, the big bodies, Brendan Rice and Kyle Ford. So just a little bit of everything. I think you have enough experience. You're not bringing back 5 guys that have put up huge numbers or anything. But yeah, I'll take this room against just about everybody else is in the country.
All right, Chris, you're a former all-conference defensive back, and you would be facing this group of receivers. How much do you give them grade-wise and kind of a brief overlook from your opinion?
Well, I wasn't going to be able to cover any of those guys. But look, it's an A. And it's an A because Jordan Addison is there. You take him away, you have a talented group, but you don't have anybody that's put up big numbers, and so you have potential rather than production. With Jordan Addison there, you have the returning Blitnikoff winner, and now all of a sudden you have your guy. By the way, Lincoln Riley said that Jordan Addison can improve a lot too, which number one is a little bit frightening to think about. And number two, that means that if you and Mark are judging the wide receivers the way you judge the quarterbacks, I guess you have to give these guys no more than a B+, because like Caleb Williams, the coach says he has a lot of improving to do.
Wow, that was a real attack.
I really hope my eye roll came across in that one.
Well,
it was not an attack. It was not an attack. We're having an
It
honest
was
conversation.
it was a bad analogy. You're comparing a coach speak talking about the Bolitnikoff winner coming over and saying, yeah, we can still improve his game a little bit to get him to the next level, to Caleb Williams, who, yeah, he's good, but he's played 6 games as a quarterback, as a starter. Apples and oranges comparison.
I'm just quoting Lincoln Riley. I thought he was probably a guy who knows something.
Okay.
Mark, what grade?
But I will agree, this is an A class as far as the wide receiver room goes. There's not a whole lot more to add to what Erik and Chris has already stated with these guys. What I guess I will add is Lincoln decided he wanted to go get 6 wide receivers to transfer in before he started anything. So I'd be curious to know, what would you grade the class without those 6 guys? I mean, are we talking in the D?
Wow, Mark in fuego, on fire.
Oh no, that was actually a serious question, because when you Trojan fans, we like to put on the Homer glasses. You're thinking, hey, these guys were all highly recruited. Everybody wanted them. Gary Bryant, Tyron Ware-Hudson, Ford before his injury. What would you grade that group without the 6 guys?
Without the transfers, it's a C- at best.
Okay.
I mean, you had without the transfers, yeah. I mean, Gary Bryant had done some things. He hadn't put up big numbers, but he's a guy that I think would show up next year. Kyle Kyle Ford, I don't think Taj Washington's going to play very much this year. I think the other guys are better than he is, and Kyle Ford probably has a role. He's a big bodied guy. I mean, it may be that Brendan Rice takes that role if he's not off playing linebacker, but we haven't seen much from Kyle Ford. He's got ability. So yeah, I mean, without the transfers, this is not a spectacular group. With the transfers, it's probably as good as anybody in the country.
And it's why Addison's so important, right? There, when they went after him, it was, oh, do they need another wide receiver? Why do they need another wide receiver? He changes everything that a defense has to do and makes the game a lot easier for everyone else on that field with him and nobody else on the team. And that's running backs, that's linemen, that's whatever. No one else on USC's offense was going to do that. And so that's why he becomes so big. And again, I go back to Caleb Williams was pretty open about that. Hey, we need this guy. I mean, this is a guy where they just spent all spring ball, building camaraderie and being together. And then he tells his guys, no, we need that guy. We need to add that guy. And that just shows you kind of how big time Addison is and what his teammates now feel about him. And again, he changes that wide receiver room. He changes the entire offense.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with an A- for this group. I think they're probably arguably as good a receiver core as there is in the country. I think they were good even before Jordan Addison was added. So he bumped them up probably from a B+ in my opinion to an A-. It'll be interesting to see how they're used by Lincoln Riley in the actual games. And I think they're going to be very explosive. I really do. Now, here's an interesting position group, and I'm really interested to see what the panel thinks of the grades on these guys. The tight ends. And rather than give a brief explanation, I'm going to let you guys give the brief explanation. So, Mark, what grade do you give the tight ends, and what is your perception of them at this point as we start fall practice here on Friday?
Do they still offer incomplete grades, Eric? Your kids come home with report cards. Chris?
Yeah, but
what are you saying about Eric's kids?
No, I'm asking. I haven't seen a report card in I don't know how many years.
I can't help them with their homework anymore. They bring home incompletes. Yeah, I just question marks everywhere.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't even bring up pass fail now that you're going to bring up every grading option.
Yeah,
but
with the tight
Eric, I'm sorry. I think the McKinney children are probably doing a stellar job at school. I don't know why. I don't know why Mark's taking shots at everybody.
It was
no, it's because they don't have Greg and Mark as their teachers.
Yeah,
I taught 30
coming home with D- on everything.
If I can offer the incomplete grade, that's exactly where I'm going with this group. There's no.
What a cop out.
No, look, if Eric's not going to show his work on how he got to an A, if Eric's not going to show his work on how to get to an A, I don't have any work to work with here. All I've got is Malcolm Epps, what I've seen. That's it.
Now, did you say Malcolm Epps or Malcolm X?
Malcolm Epps.
Okay. And you can't give a grade to this. Are you serious?
No, they're getting an incomplete.
Do you know what an incomplete means?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we can do better than incomplete. Eric, what are you giving here?
It's a C, and I'm not going to go below a C because I don't want it to be like, penalizing and saying that they've done poorly. They just haven't done a lot. I do, but if we're grading them going into the season, I like what there is in Malcolm Epps, and I think Jude Wolfe really fits that H-back role. It becomes we'll see how this looks, and it could dip below. I really like Lake McCree. I think that guy can play football kind of wherever you line him up. But then Ethan Ray and Josh Follow are big question marks. They have both had significant health injuries during their time there, and it is if you wind up with just those three, you can't expect a tight end, especially one who's going to be asked to block quite a bit, full health all the way through what, maybe hopefully more than 12 games in a season. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how that position goes and exactly what it does. You also have to factor in still one football. And now you're talking, we already talked about the running backs. We already talked about wide receivers. So yeah, this grade may come down to how many people can Jude Wolf, put on their backs as a blocker. I think he's excited to get on the field, and like I said, I think he fits there. But until you see kind of significant season-long production, yeah, can't go too high for him.
Chris, are you as negative as Erik is?
Oh, hold on.
The answer just overall, probably.
More so.
But look, no, I think he's right about the C. Let's be honest. Clay Helton and Graham Harrell, if they had a prime Kellen Winslow and Rob Gronkowski, probably couldn't have used them because those guys were inept. And that being said, these guys haven't done anything yet. So I don't know how you give them a grade higher than C. I'd like to think they would be good. Josh Follow, it'd be nice if he had a breakout year. I think it's his 15th year. I think he was recruited by Lane Kiffin. I can't believe he's still on the team, but that means he's experienced. So maybe this is his year. I don't know what to expect from these guys. I think you finally have a coach who knows how to use a tight end. Whether or not any of these guys are capable of being used effectively, I don't know. I guess we'll see. But a C seems about right.
Well, I agree. I think a C is right.
I was hoping Greg would give him an incomplete, just come right over the top.
Oh, no. No incompletes, no pass fails. It's a C, but with the caveat, and I think Chris brought this up. Look, they're going to throw to the tight ends. And I think they've been so handcuffed. Now, I'm not so sure that Malcolm Epps is a true Mackey Award watch list person. It seems like everybody in college football makes a watch list. But I do think that if Lake McCree is healthy, it could be a real game changer. And same thing you could say with Jude Wolf. So I think by scheme, they're going to be maybe better than a C, but this is still like you got to prove it. And if they throw the ball to you, you better catch it. Let's put it that way. All right. Last but certainly not least, offensive line. This is a group that's going to be monitored. Has the scheme changed this group? Are they ready to go? Are you feeling confident with it? Chris, are you feeling confident with this group, and what grade do you give and why?
I'm going to give them a B. I think it's a good group. I think you have a lot of you have a lot of experience, certainly in the interior. But the tackles both have played a lot, and you have a transfer tackle who's played a lot. I think they'll be solid. I think they'll do what you need them to do, especially with the skilled position talent you have around them, and a great scheme and a great play caller. What I don't know is if you have the sort of physical talent that some of the other offensive lines in the country have. I mean, if it's 3rd and 2, do you think you can just line up and run off tackle against Georgia or Alabama, expect to pick up a first down with this group? I think the answer to that is probably no. So I think it's a good group. I think it's going to be the best offensive line play we've seen in some years at USC. I think the offense is going to score a ton of points, and you can't do that if the offensive line is failing. I don't think they'll fail. But I don't know that they have a lot of top shelf talent. So it looks like a B to me.
Okay. Does it look like a B to you, Kulkin?
A minus.
A what?
A minus.
A minus. Okay. Defend yourself.
Okay. This group played really well last year. I thought they were probably the most productive unit on the team last year as a whole. And that was with 1 year of Clay McGuire getting his hands to kind of mold them together. Now you've brought in Josh Henson. They're 1 year older, playing together. And when you have that kind of experience that's played together and been through the ups and downs, and now they know that they get to actually push forward instead of defending backwards 80% of the time, that's going to lend itself to it might not be the top shelf talent, but it's going to lend itself well.
And they must be pretty good because they're rated higher than Caleb Williams, according to Marc Kulkin. So that's exciting.
Well,
I can't wait to see him play now.
What makes a quarterback look good? An offensive line, right?
Hey, kudos to Kulkin on that one. That was a good one, Mark. You get high points for that retort. That was very good.
I'm not looking for points. I'm just using some common sense here.
Oh, Erik, you have common sense. What's the grade do you have for this offensive line?
I'm trying to figure out how they're going to invite 10 people to the Heisman ceremony. That's going to be fun to watch. It's a B. I think like if we're going by grades, you've got like an A, a high A, and Andrew Voorhees, and I like a lot of the parts. Again, it's something where I'm gonna withhold the higher grade until you see it a little bit. I think they're really good on the interior. The questions being at tackle, and those aren't the two spots that you want questions. I mean, if anything, you want to be solid at tackle and kind of maybe figuring stuff out on the interior. And so that's where, how does Bobby Haskins fit in? Cortland Ford dealt with some injuries at the end of last year. John Mahan didn't, hang on and fortify that right tackle spot. There's a lot of talk about, we're better and we're moving forward and all that stuff. And I think the fact that you're coming at it, you're going into the season with the USC offensive line, I'm giving them a B, and it feels like it could be, B plus, something like that. I think that is a statement about, how well they did last year, and that the questions of, oh, here it is, Caleb Williams is going to get absolutely, it's going to feel like he got hit by a Mack truck in the second half of the first game. Those
well,
are
this first game is right.
Now.
Don't forget that.
There's a whole show that Greg's going to do, a one-man show about Rice coming up later in the week.
We're going to have a Rice
special.
We're going to have a Rice special.
Right.
And it's going to be sponsored by Uncle Ben's Converted Rice. I just want you to know that.
Perfect.
But
yeah, it's a good group. It's just you'd like to have like a 3-year starter coming back at left tackle where he's the guy on some of these preseason watch lists and that sort of thing.
Well, let me ask you a question, Eric. If you're a quarterback.
No, only Greg does that.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna pretend I'm.
Okay, I think we need a decorum here, and you're going to get only a little bit of it, but go right ahead.
So if you're a quarterback, Eric, where would you prefer the pressure coming from? Up the middle or from the edge?
Well, I think that
because for escapability purposes.
Yeah, but I think in terms of if you have to fix a line, right, and you have talent that USC generally has in terms of offensive linemen, I could put two guards together rather than, hey, let's just hope that he doesn't get absolutely obliterated coming off the edge here. That for me is kind of where, again, if you had two tackles and a center, I would give that maybe the B plus compared to the interior and wondering. And again, it's not even one, it's not like, can the tackles play? Like I think they're going to be okay.
The tackles make the big money for a reason. I was just throwing it out there. You got 3, 5.
But I only have an A- quarterback, so I don't know what I'm going to do now offensively.
Well, I will chime in here. I think that the change of scheme, the balance of the true offense, will make a difference with these guys. I think a lot of them were gifted much better than they were, should we say, the scheme of he whose name shall not be said again. I thought the offensive line coach last year did a good job. I think they did improve. Lincoln Riley says he likes their experience. I'm going to go with a B. I don't think they're at the level of, college football playoff team, but I know what they're going to face for the most part. And I think I like that they'll trap and they'll do all sorts of other things to take pressure off of it. So I think a B is a fair grade for this group. I will say this. I want to know if Andrew Voorhees starts off at guard, will he stay at guard through the whole season? I want to see how much Brett Nealon is improved when they put a big nose tackle over him. But the guy I really like watching, honestly, is Justin Dedich. I think this guy is a ball player and he comes to play, and I think his leadership will make a difference. And the wild card to that group, in my opinion, is Bobby Haskins. We just don't know exactly how he fits in, but he's going to fit in somewhere. So with that, let's move to the second quarter of our preseason training camp edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. Let's turn to the defense. So panel, turning to the defense, let's get your initial thoughts regarding the positions of defensive line, linebackers, and secondary. Again, give a preseason A through F letter grade. Let's start off with the defensive line. Erik McKinney, what grade are you giving this unit?
I think it's a B- right now, and I have a hard time. I would have a hard time telling Thule that to his face, and I don't want to do that. That's a guy that feels like by himself would be kind of A-A range for the whole thing. But I want to see if Nick Figueroa is fully healthy and back and takes that spot. And then, boy, that spot in the middle. I mean, the fact that you've got kind of a 3-star linebacker who just sort of got converted to defensive tackle in Stanley Tofo, and he's going to start there, right? The idea is that he's going to start there again. And I know you got kind of Brandon Peely there and that sort of thing. It feels like at USC you would, recruit over that and have a guy there in the middle. And so that's a question. I think Stanley has done a great job for kind of what he's been asked to do and that sort of thing. But that changes a lot of the game. If you can be absolute rock steady there, that makes Tuli's job a lot easier. That makes Nick's job a lot easier. And then what does it look like behind them? I think Solomon Byrd is a really intriguing addition. Tyrone Taleni, I think, is a guy that maybe not a lot of people expected a lot of, but he did, he held his own, I think, in the spring. He's got this kind of just fire hydrant, body with these long arms, and it helps him a lot kind of in the mix there as he really learns football and that position. So again, a lot of pieces. If an offense, and we saw this last year, if they can just send 3 guys at Tuli and just kind of neutralize your entire line, then that's not even a C at that point. So again, some talent, but no, that for me right now, I think is probably going to be my lowest grade across the board.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to fasten my seatbelts on this one. Chris, grade, evaluation.
You're expecting something harsh from me. I can tell with that comment.
Well, I actually would be disappointed if you didn't, but that.
Yeah, I think B- might be a little bit generous. I would say C+. Tuli is a superstar. Nick Figueroa is a very good player, and after that, you have a bunch of question marks. And the better programs in the country tend to be too deep on the defensive line. They're throwing fresh bodies at you throughout the game. USC is not even close to being in that position. It may be that some of these guys step up, but the problem is, unless it's Brandon Peely, I'm not sure who it is that's going to step up that you would say that guy has the physical skills to be an all-conference player. Maybe they're there, but I don't see it. I think this is the weakest spot on the team other than punter, because I don't think we have one. But I also don't think we'll need one with our B+ quarterback. So I think this is a spot that if you're a USC fan, you need to be worried about. And if we have an injury to Tuli, oh boy, we're in trouble.
All right, Mark, how much trouble are they in? What grade do you give them?
It's right there with Chris, C+. And that one I'm being very generous with. Erik, the point is made. You neutralize Tuli, you've got a lot of unproven talent supporting Nick Figueroa. That's it. And I know we like to separate the Russians from the defensive line, but I think that's going to be the glory position along the defensive line, so to speak. You call them Russian, defensive end, however you want to slot it. That I think is where you're going to get the majority of your production getting to the quarterback. I don't know what else you do with that group right now. If they're healthy, hey, maybe they surprise us. But I'm going to be standing behind Erik Thursday when we're meeting the guys. I'm going C+. You said B-, right, Erik? Yeah, so C+ with me. I'll stand behind you. You'll be the good.
Yeah, they won't be able to get through McKinney.
Hey, you're talking about a major stud here. Major stud. I'm going to give this group a C+, and I think that's being generous. Tuli Pelutu is an all Pac-12 lineman. I don't need to support what you guys have said because it's all accurate, in my opinion. We don't know about what Nick Figueroa will be as good as he can stay healthy. But after that, I mean, Brandon Peely at 345 pounds, that's what he was listed at in the media guide that just came out. I think that's really high. How long he can last in the game, we'll see. But it really is, all the other guys to me are just like, who are they? Not a rip on them, but I think there's some real issues here they are really, to be an elite group or above a C+, they needed another Thule to be a part of that downline group. So obviously I agree. It's a real question mark there. And as Mark pointed out, and I think accurately so, the rush end position is really, it's just a semantics name, so to speak. So that being said, Mark, expound a little bit, give a grade to this group, and expound a little bit on your feelings on the rush end spot.
The names pop out at you. They're all, high-end, highly recruited names when they were coming out of high school, but they have done nothing at this level. And Romello Height, might have the most experience of everybody. And Solomon Tulipupu is the oldest of the group, but he's got, one game of a punt coverage to his credit since he's been at USC. Man, C-. And again, this is where I offer another incomplete, but I don't want you guys jumping my crap anymore. So
Mark said he has to do this before the season's over, so he doesn't know how they played this year.
I mean, there is literally nothing to look at there. I mean, there's some names, there's names, but there's no work to show, nothing.
Is that true, Eric? Do you think there's really nothing there to show?
I mean, yeah, if you're trying to pull stats and say, oh, this guy did this last year, yeah. I mean, Romello Height came in and was seen as like a big addition, and here's this guy. But you go back and look at what he did at Auburn, and there's just, tackles and sacks and all that kind of stuff. It's not there. I think he's talented enough. Corey Foreman are talented enough. I'm going to go a B with this group, but yeah, again, that's seeing this kind of through these, Cardinal lenses a little bit, where you hear the coaches talk about kind of what they bring and athleticism and how they feel about those guys at that spot and how they played this spring. And that's projecting, end of the season. Going into the season, yeah, C-, that's fine. But I do think those two guys in this scheme this year, I think that they're going to find some production. I know Romello Height's a guy that probably is ready to get going here this season. But yeah, I have no problem C-, that area with that group coming in just based on what they've done so far.
All right, Chris, your assessment of the rush ends, grade?
Yeah, no, I think the other two guys are right. I think it's a C-, right now based on production. But the truth is, I wouldn't be surprised if 3 months from now you have a breakout star at this position. I think both Romello Height and Corey Foreman have the physical tools to be great. We talked about the other D-line spots earlier, and there I think you have a lot of guys who haven't shown production and may not have the physical tools to be great. At least here you have some guys who you would expect, if they're motivated and well coached, and I think they will be, should turn out to be really good. So I think this position could be a bright spot, but right now I don't think you can give it a high grade because you don't have anybody who's accomplished anything yet.
I don't think that as we're going with the grade, I don't think it's a D or an F group at all, but I do think it's a C- group. In coaching, you would refer to this group as they have potential, and translated potential means unproven talent. I think Corey Foreman's got a lot to prove. And, I would like to believe the coaches say he's making big strides, and I certainly hope he does, but he's going to have to prove it down after down after down. Romello Height, if he didn't come from Auburn, would you be as excited about him? I think he's got a lot to prove. But the guy I'm really rooting for, and quite frankly, I don't care which three start, as long as the guy's a good player, would be Solomon Tulipupu. This guy was so good coming out of high school in modern day, and he's been so hurt. It's almost painful to read his chart from a medical standpoint. If he can play to 90% of what he was, and he's bigger, and they're really high on him, I hope he has a hell of a year. I really do. But until I see any three of these guys or all three of them, I can't go with anything higher than a C-. I just can't do it. They're gonna have to prove it to me. All right, let's go to the linebackers. Now, when we talk about linebackers, we're talking about inside and outside, just a general overview of them. Chris, what's your thoughts on the linebacker situation? What grade do you start off with?
Well, I think with the addition of Shane Lee and Eric Gentry, this is a B- group. Without those two guys, this is a D- group. I mean, the linebacking crew was in horrible shape last year. I mean, horrible, about as bad as you'll ever see a USC linebacker group play. Eric said earlier, doesn't like to, compare last year to anything. I do. I like to compare it to the Western Front in 1917. It was that ugly. It was just horrible. Every day, a horrible slog. And the linebacker group was right in the middle of it. I don't think Shane Lee is going to be a great player. I don't think he's an All-American type linebacker. I think he's a great leader. I think he's an experienced, smart guy. I think he'll get guys lined up. And I think he'll be a good leader, and I think he will probably make a lot of plays, but he's not Chris Claiborne. Eric Gentry doesn't look like a linebacker, but he is a linebacker. The kid can play. And so I think with the addition of those two guys, I think you're going to have a capable group. I hope so, because we already talking about weaknesses up front. If we don't get solid play from the linebackers, you're talking about a defense that may force the offense to score 45 a game, which I think they'll do, but they may have to. So I'm going to give them a B- right now, and hope that Shane Lee and Eric Gentry stay healthy.
All right, Mark, do you buy that it's a B- group of linebackers coming into fall camp?
I'm in a good mood right now. I'm going to go with B. And trust me, I could be just as happy giving a B- with this group. I'm looking for the biggest step up to be from Rajon Davis of this group. I think the light bulb went on. Whether it was a maturity factor or just he had a come to Jesus meeting with some of his teammates last year. The message was sent that, hey, you're not at Mater Dei anymore. It's time to get serious. And I think Rajon will be the first person to admit that too. He'll be the first person to admit it. So you brought along Eric Gentry. You've now increased the competition with another young player who was, a freshman All-American. Shane Lee comes over from Alabama. I agree with Chris. When you see Shane, he's not the most physical, imposing middle linebacker you're ever going to come across. He's a fire plug built guy. He's incredibly strong. He's very intelligent. And to that point, he's going to do very well playing the position. But, he's not that, he's not an eyeball catcher, so to speak. Yeah, with those three guys, I think he'll be okay. That's why I'm going with a B. There's some good potential there. And I think they have enough work experience behind them. You can give them a B grade.
Erik McKinney, is this group a B grade?
Yeah, I was going to do a B too. I think Eric Gentry by himself takes this thing from a C- to a C. And then I think Shane Lee takes it a full grade to a B, not so much because of what he's going to do, but because he is going to raise the game of everyone around him, all those other linebackers, just a little bit enough to bring that whole thing up a grade for me. This was at Media Day, and he talked about kind of building culture and all that stuff. And you can't, one guy like that who's not Nick Saban is not going to bring over the Alabama culture, but he gets it and he understands what goes on there. And he said a lot of guys have started kind of understanding what he's talking about, why he talks about the things that he talks about. And those are things that really kind of permeate the locker room. And you can tell when guys are buying in. And that's sort of what he has talked about. And I don't think any spot needed it more than that inside linebacker spot. So I see him kind of raising that play. Rajon Davis, Mark, you mentioned he'll tell you. He did tell us in spring. He talked about how important Shane Lee was and how much he rubbed off on him, how to work in the weight room, how to play on the field, all of that sort of stuff. And so I think that's the part of Shane Lee that raises the game. I don't know if Shane Lee is a good linebacker. I know that he went to Alabama. I know that he had a really good freshman season. It's been a while since he's played fully regularly as a linebacker. He's going to have to run sideline to sideline. He's going to have to do a lot of stuff. In the spring game, he didn't pop quite like maybe I thought he might, kind of making plays in the backfield and all over the place, but he's going to give them a solid presence in the middle of the defense that I don't think that they've had in a while. So again, for me, he raises it a whole letter grade just because of yes, a bit what he can do, but what he brings kind of to that group and really the whole defense. I mean, he kind of notches up every position, I think, a little bit just based on what he's doing this offseason for the program.
All right, this group is a C plus.
Sorry, forget everything I just said. Greg's got it.
Glad to see you're coming to your senses.
Right.
No, I mean, if Shane Lee wasn't coming from Alabama, would you be as excited? That's not.
If he talks the talk, he walks the walk. I think, coming from Norfolk State, I'd buy what he's talking about.
Oh, I've heard him talk. I agree with you, but he's got to prove it on the field. And because he hasn't really played a whole lot since his freshman year, he's got a lot to prove on the field. I think he's rejuvenated. He's re-energized, which is a good thing. I think he's going to get good coaching. But I want to see how much better Raylan Goforth is. I think Gentry is awfully slender to play inside. I see him as being an outside linebacker. I think Rajon Davis is a key because he's got a lot to prove. And because there seems to be a lot of guys that have a lot to prove, this is not a B or A group, in my opinion. The benefit of the doubt is I even gave him a plus, but we'll see what happens. As we will see what happens when we get to the secondary. Eric, what's your thoughts on the secondary now? Are they talented? Are they any good? What grade do you see?
Why should he even answer the question? You just dismiss what he says.
Just say what it is. I'll nod.
I'm glad we were able to wake Chris up. He's still transitioning from the time zone change of England to Bakersfield. But that being said, Eric, what grade do you give?
I'll redact your location in post, Chris. Don't worry about that.
Thanks.
It's a B plus for me. Love Kalen Bullock. Getting Max Williams back, I think Max is a phenomenal football player. Xavier Alford last year, it's one of those things where you talk about, and we're gonna write quite a bit about like how many starters are returning and who's coming back and all that sort of stuff. This secondary started changing over kind of last year. Kalen Bullock and Xavier Alford, they don't count as returning starters, but you started to see the switch and they started to get more time kind of as the season went along. I think those two are good. I think Mekhi Blackman is really good. And so if you've got those four, and that includes Max Williams there, I think that's a really good start. Again, if you want to talk about how much, consistent production and do they have years of production? No, but I'll go ahead and start with those four. The spot that drops it down for me is that other cornerback spot. And just because I honestly don't know how that's going to play out. I think there's talent there. Latrell McCutcheon and Jacob Covington came down from Washington, and you return Sierra Wright and Prophet Brown. And is Devontae Jackson healthy enough to make kind of a full push there? Josh Jackson's a guy that I've really liked. So you can rattle off the names, but at no point are you going to land on a guy that intercepted 6 passes last year and is coming back as a potential all-conference guy to play there. So there's a few holes, but boy, I think Kalen Bullock has a way of kind of potentially erasing some mistakes. And, we saw, I think Talanoa Hufanga had 4 interceptions in a short season, and Isaiah Polamau had that run with 4 interceptions. I think Kalen Bullock kind of push that number maybe more this year. That range back there from him is just something else. So I think it's a good group. I think there are still questions kind of all over the place to answer though. So I'll not be surprised, Greg, when you give it a D plus.
Okay. Well, okay. I can accept the attack on me. Chris, this is your expertise, all conference guy as in the secondary. What's your overall thoughts about these guys?
I think there's a ton of talent back there. We talked at some of the other defensive position groups where you don't have talent that looks like a top-notch USC squad from the past. I don't think that's true in the secondary. I think in the secondary, there's a ton of talent. My big question mark is Dante Williams. I still don't know if the guy can coach. Remember last year at this time, all of us were convinced that the secondary was going to be a strength. They had played pretty well the year before that. They had a ton of guys coming back that were highly recruited, that had some experience. And you thought, if I know anything about this defense, I know the secondary is going to be solid. That's what we were saying this time last year. And it was a disaster. It was a year-long train wreck. So I think Eric's right. Blackman is going to take one of those corner spots and he's going to play well. What are we going to get on the other side? I don't know. There are a ton of guys with the tools. Whether they'll be coached up or not, I don't know, to be honest. I'm a little bit worried about that. At safety, there are a bunch of guys that can play. Kalen Bullock is a future superstar. He's going to be an All-American before he leaves. He may be an All-American this year. He's a superstar, but you have a lot of other guys who can play. Max Williams, who probably is your nickel guy. You have the transfer from Ohio State. I think he assumed that he's going to play a lot, and maybe he will. But if he doesn't, it's because there are a lot of other guys at that spot. So I think the secondary should be a strength of the defense. I'm hopeful that these guys will get coached up and play well. But I don't have any faith in Dante Williams other than as a recruiter right now. And maybe that's unfair. Maybe it's unfair because last year was a disaster for everybody on the defensive side. And Dante was busy pretending to be a head coach instead of being a secondary coach. But I'm worried about it. And I'm worried about it because I think this is a group that should be outstanding if they're coached well.
Mark, are you as concerned about the secondary as Chris is? Oh, by the way, Chris, forgive me. What grade did you give this group? I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't. I'm gonna give this group a B right now, but I think that this group could be an A by the end of the year. I really think there's that much talent there.
Okay, fair enough. Mark, what do you think? Grade?
Yeah. Well, first, I want to let Chris know that Kalen Bullock was a freshman All-American last year. I went and looked that up while you were saying.
I'm talking real All-American, Mark, not freshman All-American. I'm talking about the real deal, man.
All right. Well, the Football Writers Association of America voted him one, so I'm just letting you know he was a freshman All-American. But where I'm going with this was that wasn't even good enough for him to earn any type of all-conference preseason selection. Not first team, not second team, not even honorable mention. So that kind of blew me away when I saw that list come out, that Kalen Bullock's name wasn't anywhere to be found. Xavier Alford, though, did make honorable mention from USC. So I don't know. As far as giving this group a grade, I'm with Chris on this one. I can go B. I think everyone's going to assume Mekhi Blackman is going to be starting at one corner. I think the other starter, it's going to come down between Joshua Jackson and the transfer from Washington, Jacoby Covington. Guy played a ton as a freshman, and he's got those tools that I think Dante likes. He's big, he's rangy. This group, there's a lot of guys on that defensive back group. I was counting them up. There's over 20, and they're pretty versatile. So, yeah, if to Chris's point, if Dante can work his magic coaching and not have to focus on the whole defense and the whole team, this group has a lot of potential. So I think B is a good starting point. You got a freshman at safety. You brought over a few guys in the transfer portal. Should be a strong group.
All right, I'm giving this group a C+. I think that Blackman is pretty much penciled in at one corner spot. I agree with Mark totally. I couldn't believe that Kalen Bullock didn't even, not even mentioned basically on the preseason All Pac-12. I don't know what these guys were drinking, or just maybe came off a vacation and decided, oh, I got to get this in. I think it was unfair. So I think this group has a lot to prove. I think there are athletes there. But just because you're a good athlete doesn't mean you're a good safety or you're a good cornerback. You're a good athlete. And I want to see the athletes turn into good position players. And I agree with both Chris and Mark. I really am not sure about Dante Williams. I think he gets a somewhat of a pass because of what he was asked to do last year, but I know the secondary fell apart. I also know that he coached the secondary in spring ball, and was there that much of a drop off? They should have been well trained going into the season. So C+ for me, guys. All right, we'll make this quick here. Your thoughts on special teams with emphasis on the punting situation. Now the true freshman Atticus Bertrams is not on the roster. Punting grade, I think it's open season on this one. I will allow a grade of incomplete if you feel so inclined. Mark, what's going on here?
I don't know why you don't have any confidence in Will Rose, or I think he's going to be our punter.
All right.
What else are you going to do with it other than incomplete? I mean, you have to look at the roster to find out who the punters are. You can't even name one right now.
Well, Erik, what's your perspective on this grade and perspective?
Yeah, it's incomplete until we get a full understanding if Atticus Bertrams is going to be with the program this fall. Garth White is coming in as a junior college guy, maybe a kicker, maybe a punter, but no, it's incomplete. Although maybe it's a B+ if you're talking about Caleb Williams, running quarterback sneaks or just going for it on fourth downs. He's okay, I guess. Just above average for some of the guys.
Chris, what grade are you giving the punting situation?
I'm not going to. I don't like punting, and I don't like talking about punting. I'll only say this: if Atticus Bertrams is not going to be at USC, I hope they go out and find another punter also named Atticus, because I think it's a huge loss for the program. It's a huge loss for the program when you lose out on that name. So I think we should just put an ad in the paper. If you're named Atticus or willing to change your name to Atticus and you can punt a little bit, we have a spot for you.
All righty. My feeling is that if we're not going to be Atticus Bertrams, might as well go with Atticus Finch, but I don't think that's going to happen. I give it a grade of an incomplete. Who knows? I would pay attention to Garth White, though. I saw when his name popped up that there might be a problem somewhere. Didn't know what it was, but obviously we understand now that Bertrams is not listed on the roster at this point. As far as place kicker, Alex Stadhouse, Chris, what grade?
I don't like talking about kickers either. I just want to go for it. I want to go for it on fourth down. I want to go for 2. I don't want to talk about place kicking.
All right, so you're going to take a pass on this.
This isn't a soccer show. I don't want to talk about
that. Mark, will you talk about it?
Only because I remember that game-winning kick in the Rose Bowl against Penn State, that kickers do matter on occasion. So as far as what we have Alex Stadhouse, and every time he's been out there, he's performed. He's done what it's asked. So until I see him not be able to kick a 40-yard field goal and put a kickoff into the back of the end zone, I'm going to give him a B.
All right, Erik, is he a B in your book?
No, he's an A. The guy's never missed a kick at USC, and he absolutely drilled a 55-yard field goal in the spring game. Yeah, fine. Throw him out there whenever you need him. There's no issue with a guy who brings that kind of credential into the season. And he's a great kid. So there you go.
Got Dennis Lynch backing him up too, behind him. So,
all right, I'm giving Alex a B. I think he's done everything that you could ask for up to this point. The show is now on him. So I think as long as he continues consistency, I think he'll get better. I think it's a fair grade to start off with a B. So with that, it's halftime, and we will go through this rapidly. The day before Friday's Pac-12 Media Day, the conference media poll was released. For those that did not see or hear the preseason order of predicted finish, it was as follows. 1 was Utah, 2 was Oregon, 3 USC, 4 UCLA, 5 Oregon State, 6 Washington, 7 Washington State, 8 Stanford, 9 Cal, 10 ASU, 11 Arizona, and 12 Colorado. Panel, what caught your attention in the preseason media poll, and are you in agreement with where the Trojans were picked? Eric, what do you think?
It's pretty close to how I had it in my vote. I had the first 3 the same and the last 3 the same, and then a bit of a jumble in the middle, but nobody too crazy. I had Cal at 7 instead of 9. I think defense, can always show up, and I think Cal's going to be better offensively. But no, nothing in there. I had Oregon State ahead of UCLA just because. But yeah, I could have seen USC higher than that, but there was no argument with Utah at 1. I think you have to put them there. And USC just, I know it's a different program and it's different coaches and a different quarterback and all that kind of stuff. But you go back through the preseason picks and how they look at the postseason, and anytime there's a huge disparity, typically it's USC getting picked 1 at the beginning and not finishing 1 at the end.
Chris, are you comfortable with that 1 through 12?
Both Oregon schools are too high. I like what Jonathan Smith has done at Oregon State. I thought they played well last year. But the truth is, a program like Oregon State does not recruit well enough that they can be consistently good. I would expect them to fall back a little bit this year. Oregon is not going to be the second best team in the conference. They have a brand new coaching staff, and they went out and got Bo Nix from Auburn to play quarterback. If they actually play Bo Nix at quarterback, they're an 8-4 team. That kid cannot play. There's a reason he left Auburn. He cannot play. He's lousy. So I think Oregon has some issues. And I think we're going to see in their opener, when they get pounded by about 35 at Georgia, that they're just not that great. Oregon is probably the 4th best team in the conference. I would have it Utah, USC, UCLA, actually, which I think would probably be pretty good. And then Oregon after that.
Fair enough. All right, Mark, thoughts?
Yeah, I would definitely have USC ahead of Oregon, not just because of the I don't like Oregon thing, but just because, for what Chris pointed out, new coaching staff, you're bringing in Bo Nix to play ahead of your 5-star quarterback that you recruited the year before. Well, maybe Lanning didn't recruit him, but he was a pretty hot commodity out there. That's a telltale sign for me. And I definitely would have Arizona above ASU. That doesn't say a whole lot. I mean, we're talking about flipping 10 and 11. So, but I just think ASU is in for one of those. I think they're in for a type of season that USC experienced last year. It'll be interesting to see if Herm makes it through the entire season. Other than that, who cares? Preseason poll.
Okay, I think Utah is the logical choice for 1. I agree that SC probably should be 2. UCLA, I would go with 3 personally. And 4, I would probably go with Oregon. I think it's a shame, just from a fan standpoint, that Oregon and USC are not going to play during the regular season. I think the one that I look at just as an overall perspective is I think that Arizona is going to be better than Arizona State. Cal is where it should be. Stanford's where it should be. And if I'm a Colorado Buffalo fan, I go, why in the world did we hire Carl Dorrell? Are we surprised that they're number 12? That doesn't look like it's a program doing any sort of ascending, getting better. And if anyone's going to be on the hot seat, it's going to definitely be him. So, all right, let's, before we get into the third quarter, before we end the second half, a reminder that you're watching or listening to wearesc.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle. This week's We Are SC panelists include Marc Kulkin, Chris Arledge, Erik McKinney, and I'm Greg Katz. We also encourage you to check out wearesc.com website, part of the On3 network, and become a subscriber to the best coverage of USC football and recruiting and overall Trojans athletics. And as a reminder, We Are SC is currently offering a wearesc.com 7-day free trial, which includes future monthly or yearly payment options to view our exclusive On3 Plus content, which includes breaking stories, analysis, recruiting, and data for USC football, basketball, and the balance of USC athletics. All right, let's kick into the third quarter now, and I think this is really something that is something to keep an eye on. It was learned last week through a breaking recruiting story by WeAreSC.com's Scott Schrader that the Trojans' #1 recruit for the class of 2023 committed 5-star quarterback Malachi Nelson of local Los Alamitos High School took an unofficial recruiting visit to Texas A&M. Schrader disclosed that Lincoln Riley was aware of the visit. Panel, your thoughts on Malachi Nelson's visiting Texas A&M after having appeared rock solid in his commitment to the Trojans. Nelson is a key figure in the Trojans' 2023 recruiting efforts and has been a lead USC recruiter himself to build the class of 2023. Are you concerned, panel, about Malachi Nelson's visit to Texas A&M? What message does it send to other committed USC members of the class of 2023 and potential Trojans recruits for that class? And does this illustrate the possibility that USC is lagging behind in booster-driven NIL collectives? I can't think of a better person to start this off than Marc Kulkin. What's going on, dude?
Am I concerned? No. I actually think this is a really good thing. Scott wrote about this. He kind of made the comment, and I touched on it in my story as well. USC needs to understand that if you want to recruit the top elite players, you're going to be in a bidding war. Not the university themselves, but their NIL group, their collectives, whatever. When I talk about USC, I'm just using the most ubiquitous term. So just when I say USC, that's what I'm talking about. So Malachi Nelson knows that he is the guy right now, and he's testing his NIL market. And if Texas A&M says, hey, we're going to pay you to come out here, we're going to wine you, we're going to dine you, we're going to show you what you're worth, why wouldn't you? And I think that's the message that's being sent right now, that USC better be receiving. Until these guys' names are on that LOI and faxed in, they're on the open market. So yeah, you know what? If I had a kid who is as talented as Malachi is, and the choice came down to, all right, you get to go to USC for 4 years, 3 or 4 years, and you're going to have some great NIL opportunities. Can't put anything in writing, can't give you a straight dollar figure, or I can go to one of these other programs and they're going to write a number down on a napkin and say, once you're enrolled, your monthly payments are going to start, and this is how much you're going to make. I'm probably going to take that napkin offer, especially when we're talking about 7 figures. It's hard. I'm just being pragmatic about it.
Okay, Eric, is this a disaster waiting to happen? You're an acknowledged guru yourself on recruiting. Is this the Titanic or not?
I always love that it can only be one of those two things, right? No, it's not a good thing. It's not a good, no visit is ever just, I was in the area, I accidentally visited the campus, right? No, it's not a good thing for USC's top-rated 5-star quarterback commit to be taking unofficial visits at this point, especially to Texas A&M. It is absolutely a direct assault, volley at USC on, hey, I'm going to go see what's out there, right? I'm going to go see, like what Marc said, what I'm worth, not in terms of NIL, in terms of this fake, air quote, NIL, hey, our people here, our boosters can get you money before you come or based on you coming here, right? So you can't, it's one of those things. Malachi Nelson took, the first offer, and when you're negotiating, right, and you have this kind of leverage, you don't take the first offer. So you go out and see what else is there, and you come back. USC has had a lot of time to sort of figure this out and see where this is going. They are very clearly standing behind what they have in Boulevard and the agreement with State Data and how they're going to run their NIL program, to where, hey, if you come here, we are going to have the absolute best NIL foundation and services and everything for you. And I mentioned it on the message board. You're basically trying to get 16 and 17-year-old kids to turn down a briefcase loaded with money that they can take right now and instead enroll in a 10-week course on how to play the stock market and how this is going to be kind of your future. And obviously it's not exactly that, but it is having them turn down what they can hold in their hands right now and what they see other top recruits getting across the country. And it's, hey, that guy's going to Miami, that guy's going to Tennessee, that guy's going to Texas A&M, and they're not getting busted for doing this right now. And so, yeah, I see this as being a big part of that. I don't think it's going to be, he's immediately going to decommit and he's definitely going to go to Texas A&M. I don't think it's that, but I do think it's kind of a sense of, where do I stand in all this? How is this going? Let me explore all of my options when it comes to everything here. And no, it's never a good thing when one of your top recruits is starting to, again, is it looking around? Is it just getting a sense for himself? Whatever it is, no, Malachi Nelson visiting USC every single weekend between now and when he signs, that would be the good news for USC.
Chris, you have some knowledge of the Texas area and the fanaticism of Texas A&M and Texas and the things that go on there. Is this much to do about nothing, or is this something that Trojan fans should really be concerned about?
Well, I think Malachi Nelson wants to play for Lincoln Riley. He knows that playing for Lincoln Riley is in his best interest over the long term, especially because he wants to be an NFL starting quarterback. Lincoln Riley can't afford to lose Malachi Nelson, so I don't think Nelson's going to leave. But no, it's not a great thing that he's visiting, and he's visiting because USC has decided that it is not going to play this same game that its competitors are playing, and that's going to cost it. It's already cost it with some offensive linemen. I don't think there's any way Lincoln Riley will allow Malachi Nelson to leave without finding a booster somewhere to offer him a check. And so in some sense, I think this might be a good thing. I think this might be a wake-up call when Zachariah Branch and Malachi Nelson visit Texas A&M, because Texas A&M is actually offering big checks. That's a sign to USC that they need to get serious. And the Boulevard thing is not serious. I'm not saying that it won't be successful. It might be successful. But right now, it is not a serious competitor in the college football landscape. It is a pipe dream explained by, and it's something that we hope will be good. It's a nice idea. It's a startup company that doesn't yet have a product on the market, run by a guy who's never run a startup, by the way, who came off of, who was working for the USC football administration. Now he's heading that up. Is he a smart guy? Probably. Does he know what he's doing? I don't know. And I don't know why any high school kid would say, oh yeah, I can count on that guy to get me the millions that I'm being offered by Tennessee, Miami, or Texas A&M. I wouldn't trust that. So look, USC needs to be serious about this. And it may very well be that none of us like it that high school kids are being offered 4-year, $8 million contracts to play places. But if they are being offered that and USC doesn't want to play that, that just means USC is not interested in being an elite college football program. And I thought when they offered $12 million a year to Lincoln Riley, that's what they were committed to doing. They were committed to being an elite college football program. So I know Lincoln Riley's putting a good spin on all this NIL stuff and talking about how he thinks USC is in a great position and things are going to work out great. But I wonder if he really believes that, because if I were him, I'd be a little bit nervous that the top guys are being offered a lot of money and I apparently can't offer them any of that same money. That's a problem. And USC needs to fix it. And it probably only needs to be fixed for 1 year, because by next year, maybe Boulevard is off and running, maybe the conferences, and I think it's going to have to be the conferences, come in and set up some new rules to govern NIL. So maybe it's just a 1-year fix. But okay, so you got a 1-year fix that you need to get in place, guys. And if you don't, you're going to continue to have what we've already seen, which is USC's 2 most important recruits going and looking around at a place where we know they're handing out big bags of cash. That's not great.
Well, I will agree with everyone. I'm not going to prolong it. I don't like seeing it done. I don't like players making commitments and then looking around. This, I don't want to see SC get into a bidding war, but they may have to do that if they want to keep the class together, at least the elite players. I don't think it's ever a good thing when players start visiting anything. You never know what can happen. Look at the firestorm storm that Texas A&M had with Alabama and Nick Saban. And I hope it doesn't come into something like that, but it is an issue and it's something that we should monitor. All right, here we go. Fourth quarter, you all know what this means. That means it's time to light the, well, maybe we're not lighting it. Oh, but we are lighting it. I was only kidding.
Oh, I'm so relieved.
I know, because you know that this is named after you. The Chris Arledge lighting of the Coliseum torch in preparation for Musings with Arledge. And a reminder, any comment or opinions expressed by Chris Arledge are solely those of his own, or not in any shape or form a reflection or of the opinions of wearesc.com or the On3 network. Any publication, rebroadcast, use, or descriptions of Musings with Arledge without the express written consent of the Boys and Girls Clubs of America and the Winter Olympic Committee is strictly prohibited. So with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, we bring to you the Inside the Trojans Huddle version of Christopher Arledge's Musings with Mr. Arledge. You're on.
Thank you, Greg. When I was last with you guys, I promised that we would conclude our introduction to the Big Ten by talking about the big three of Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. I lied at least a little bit. I'm not going to talk about Penn State, not because they're not a solid program. They clearly are. But the reality is that you can't talk about Penn State's football history without talking about the towering figure that dominates their football history. That's Joe Paterno. And you can't talk about Joe Paterno without talking about the horrible scandal that overtook Penn State. And to be honest, there's nothing fun or funny about that. And so I'm not going to talk about it. I'm instead going to talk about the two big dogs of the Big Ten, Ohio State and Michigan. USC's had a lot of games against both. USC is 6-4 against Michigan overall and has won 6 of the last 7, all of those being in the Rose Bowl, I believe. USC's 13-10-1 against Ohio State and has had some classics against the Buckeyes. I personally have attended 3 USC Ohio State games, 2 of which were beatdowns at the Coliseum, one of which was a come-from-behind victory behind a freshman quarterback. Fortunately, I was out of the country for that Cotton Bowl disaster and had to watch that on television. Now, because Ohio State and Michigan are rivals, in fact, they have the second best rivalry in all of college football, we're going to have a little Buckeyes versus Wolverines competition today to really decide which of these two programs is the top dog in the Big Ten until USC comes in and takes that over. So I have a few categories we're going to run through very quickly to make this, to decide this competition. We're going to start with a category of history and traditions. Obviously, both programs have rich histories. These are 2 of college football's blue bloods, 2 of the top 10 programs of all time. Michigan, surprisingly, has not only more wins, but leads the overall series against Ohio State and claims more national titles. Still, I'm going to give the nod to Ohio State. The reason is because most of Michigan's damage was done a long time ago, well before World War II. And while I don't want to denigrate Greg's high school football career, football things that happened before World War II count less than things that have happened in the modern era. And Ohio State has far more accomplishments in the modern era. Michigan has only 1 national title in the modern era. Ohio State has quite a number. And other than a short period of time between 85 and 2000, when Michigan really controlled the rivalry, Ohio State has dominated Michigan in recent years. And Ohio State doesn't have down periods. They're maybe the most consistent of the blue blood programs. They don't have a Rich Rod era at Ohio State. They don't have a Clay Helton era. So on history and tradition, 1 point for Ohio State. Second category, uniforms. Credit to both programs for maintaining a classic look, as it should be. These are 2 elite football programs, not upstarts that have to change their uniforms every 5 minutes because they're always screaming, "Look at me," like somebody we're not going to talk about right now. But Michigan wins the matchup. Michigan's helmet is a classic, maybe other than Notre Dame's. the most iconic helmet in all of college football. Ohio State has that messy sticker thing going on with their helmets. I know that's a tradition of theirs. They should stick with it, but it looks ugly. And Michigan has a better color scheme. So we're now tied 1-1, which takes us to maybe my favorite category of the night, famous alums. Representing Michigan, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. That's right. He is a Michigan grad. Now, you'd think this might be tough to beat. You remember the Unabomber, the guy with the Duck Dynasty beard. He had those lengthy, crazy screeds, had a habit of sending bombs in the mail. You think there's no way in the world that Ohio State can beat that. But representing Ohio State, Jeffrey Dahmer. I'm being serious about this. America's most notorious serial killer attended Ohio State. And you're saying that's not really fair, Chris, because I'm sure he started his serial killer career after leaving Ohio State. But no, he actually started killing before he attended Ohio State. So Dahmer, more notorious and more infamous than Unabomber, point for Ohio State. It's now 2-1 Buckeyes. Category 4, fight songs. This isn't close, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Try this at home. Hum Ohio State's fight song. Go ahead. See, nobody can do it. I listened to it an hour before we started this show. I still can't do it. It's a terrible song. Nobody ever remembers it. Michigan's fight song, other than Notre Dame's, may be the most recognizable in college football. Michigan, big in this category. We're tied at 2. Category 5, mascots. Ohio State's mascot is a nut. That's goofy. It would seem even more goofy if we weren't so used to hearing Ohio State Buckeyes. We just heard it for so long, it doesn't sound strange. But substitute any other nut, you can see how ridiculous it is. The Ohio State almonds, the Ohio State pistachios. Choosing an inanimate object as your mascot is questionable. Choosing a food is ridiculous. Nuts are not scary. Now, peanuts can be scary, but I don't think peanuts are technically a nut. And if you're choosing a mascot based on its ability to poison people, that also seems inappropriate. You wouldn't call yourself the Ohio State Hemlocks or the Ohio State Arsenic. So that's just a poor choice. Michigan is the Wolverines. Tough, mean, nasty little animals. You wouldn't want to get in a scrap with them. And while it strangely enough, there are no Wolverines in Michigan, haven't been for hundreds of years. That's a slight problem. But there are no Trojans in Southern California either. So I'm not one to throw stones. Michigan wins this category hands down. Michigan leads 3-2, which brings us to our final category, coaches. Representing Michigan, Bo Schembechler. Representing Ohio State, Woody Hayes. This was actually a closer battle than I expected because the overall records, both in conference and overall, are very close. And Bo actually has a slight lead in winning percentage. Bo even wins the rivalry series against Woody. He was 5-4-1 against Woody. Still, Woody wins this battle. Woody had 5 national titles. Bo had 0. What Bo had was a habit of losing all of his bowl games. Woody's success winning championships helps to overcome the fact that Woody actually punched an opposing player during a game. Not in self-defense, not jokingly, but because he was mad because the guy picked off a pass. That's some high-level anger management issues there. And that punch makes the competition close. But here's what puts Woody over the top. In 1961, Ohio State was leading Michigan 42-20 with less than a minute remaining. Woody chooses not to kill the clock. He wants more. So Ohio State completes a 70-yard pass, converts a 4th down, and then scores to make it 48-20. And then Woody goes for 2, just to put 50 on the board. Bad sportsmanship? Yes. But against your hated rival? Hilarious. Now, here's the thing that makes it even better. Because it's only 7 years later that Ohio State is leading Michigan 44-14. And again, Ohio State scores late touchdown to make the score even uglier. At 50-14, what does Woody do? He goes for 2. Asked to explain why, he later says, because I couldn't go for 3. Woody Hayes wins this competition. Ohio State and Michigan are now tied at 3 apiece, which means we have to have a tiebreaker. And to settle this battle, we're going to turn to the wisdom of Dr. Evil. When the original Austin Powers, as part of a brilliant monologue talking about his upbringing, said this of his father: "My father would womanize, he would drink, he would make outrageous claims like he invented the question mark." Now, I don't think Ohio State or Michigan claims to have invented the question mark. At least I've never heard that they do. But Ohio State seems to believe they invented the definite article, the word the Ohio State University. They always stress the, as if they're the only university in the country that has a the in their name. You know how many universities have a the in their name? Almost all of them. The University of Michigan, the University of Southern California, the University of Oklahoma. What in the world has gotten into Ohio State that they feel the need to stress the ubiquitous the in their name? Are there other Ohio states that use and so they use a the to distinguish themselves? What if we're trying to put Ohio State in alphabetical order? Do we put them with the O's or the T's? I mean, I don't know what to do with this. It's so silly that it's actually quite offensive. And what I'm going to say is Ohio State will now be docked a point for pretending that the is an important part of their name when almost everybody has the in their name and knows that it's not that important. And not only for doing it, but actually for being arrogant about that foolishness. Therefore, final score, Michigan 3, Ohio State 2. Congratulations to the Big Blue, the actual champions of the Big Ten, right up until the point when USC gets there.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. And with that, we salute all of you that are in the Big Ten that watch our broadcast now. And hopefully, Chris will get around to your school at some point during the season. So hold out a little bit of hope. All right. Let's begin.
I can't imagine all the fines we're going to have to pay for the amount of times you said that word in that.
I know it.
Panel, the Coliseum holds 77,500. The Trojans have 7 home games, 3 of which are non-conference games at home: Rice, Fresno State, Notre Dame. Home conference games include ASU, Washington State, Cal, and Colorado. Given the huge anticipation of the Trojan season, panel, give your opinion on the home attendance numbers for each of the 7 home games. And again, keep in mind the capacity is 77,500. Again, the 7 home games in order are Rice, Fresno State, ASU, Washington State, Cal, Colorado, which is a Friday night game, and Notre Dame. So we'll go in this order: Chris, Mark, Eric, and myself, and we'll start off with Rice. Chris, what's the number for the Rice game, the opening game?
72,000.
72,000. Mark?
69-8.
Eric?
It is an announced sellout.
All right, you stick with that answer.
Yes.
All right. I say there'll be a minimum of 70,000 there for the home opener. All right. Fresno State. Chris?
That's an easy sellout. If USC didn't pack the place, you'd have a bunch of, I almost said a word I shouldn't say, from Fresno to come down and pack the place. That game is a sellout without question.
Okay, without question?
Yeah.
Mark? Is
Yeah.
it a sellout? What's your numbers?
Yeah, I'm going sellout because I'm assuming USC is coming in for that game, defeating Stanford as well. So the train will be rolling.
Eric?
That is an announced sellout.
Your consistency is to be admired. You have been
So
well
far.
trained by the USC administration when it comes to announced attendance. I will say 77,500. It's a sellout. They'll be packing the grapevine coming down from the Central Valley. Fresno State had a big turnout the year that Reggie Bush played, and I sense that they're going to have a good team, and it will be a real interesting game. And yes, it'll be a sellout. ASU, Chris?
ASU is going to be a disaster, but I'm going to assume that USC is rolling at that point. So I think we get close to 70.
Okay. Mark?
I'm going to use Eric's answer on this one. And again, assuming that USC is still undefeated, they will announce a sellout.
Eric?
No, that is not an announced sellout. That'll be a bit short, I think. But just because I think we're all in agreement, if Arizona State fans don't come at all, that's going to be tougher to get to. But only not an announced sellout, maybe because the Arizona State fans don't sell out by their lot.
And Herm Edwards will get fired on the tarmac after that game.
Oh, that would be
It'll be an amazing,
ironic twist.
Chris, just a question on that since you brought it up. Will the firing be at LAX or at Sky Harbor Airport?
I don't know. I think they'll probably have to consult with Pat Hayden to figure out the best firing tarmac, but they're going to choose one or the other.
Absolutely. I'll say 68,000. Washington State, Chris?
I mean, that sounds like a dog of the game. I'll say 64.
Okay. Mark?
60.
Wow. Eric?
64,001.
Very good. Very good. I will say 68,000 flat. All right. Cal, I think Cal is the homecoming game, right?
Yeah.
So take that into consideration on your prognostication here. So Chris, what's the attendance going to be for Cal?
Oh, that'll be a near sellout. There will be a smattering of empty seats, but I think it's homecoming, and Cal will usually draw some sort of crowd. So I think that's close to a sellout, but not quite.
All right, Mark.
Yeah, again, homecoming, USC's lost 2 of the last 3 to Cal, believe it or not. Oldest rivalry, probably close to sellout.
Eric?
That will be an announced sellout.
And I agree with Eric. I think there'll be actually 75,000 butts and seats, but I think some of it could be on what time the kickoff is, but gathering that it's homecoming, it should have a great turnout, and if SC has a great record up to this point. All right, let's go to Colorado. Now, remember, that's a Friday night game. So Chris, what's the effect going to be for that one?
28,000 at kickoff, 58,000 by the end.
Okay. Mark, what's it going to be?
Yeah, traffic will be the instigator here. Again, it's a Friday night game. Colorado, I'm going to go 62,000. Again,
Okay.
USC's rolling. Interest is still high.
All right.
Yeah,
I think you make a good point.
It feels funny to kind of say that. I mean, we've been chopping at like 45, 50, right? The last couple of years. So to just throw out above 60 is still a big number. I think there's going to be 19 or 20 people total at kickoff, and yeah, it'll get. I think closer to 70. I think people are ready to come out and see SC. I mean, the Friday night kind of changes things a little bit, but I think there's going to be people in seats this year.
I think the attendance will be based on what the Trojans record is, and if people really feel that they're headed towards the Pac-12 title game or visions of grandeur, a college football playoff possibility, I think they'll show up, but I'm going to go with 60,000. Last home game, I think we'll be in agreement with this. Notre Dame, Chris?
It's a no-brainer. That's a sellout. Easy.
Mark?
77.5 plus.
Okay, Eric?
Yeah, I think maybe it depends. You just talked about what kind of season is it, right? Are if both these teams are sitting on 3 or 4 losses, I don't think it gets to be a sellout. If there's any kind of momentum at all for either team, yeah, that's a sellout.
I say it's a sellout because it's SC Notre Dame, and you don't have to fit 92,000 people in any longer. 77,500. It's going to be a sellout, and it'll be wild because if Notre Dame is going for a college football playoff situation, look, if the SC fans are not going to support the team by that point, remember they'll be coming off whatever happens against UCLA. Certainly the Notre Dame fans will show up if they think it's a shot at the college football playoff. So heading into overtime, and then we will be done for this edition. We're in overtime. It's time to answer some viewer questions and for panel answers in a free-for-all format. Folks, if you'd like to submit a question so that we can answer or give our opinions, just go either to the Gary P. or We Are SC members message boards at wearesc.com. From there, you'll see the topic thread regarding questions for Inside the Trojans Huddle. All right, we've got 3 questions. One from Red Eye in Bethel, New York. How do we purchase tickets to the LSU USC game next year in Las Vegas? I want to be first in line. Any suggestions?
Yeah, don't purchase for next year. Wait for the 2024 game when they play there.
Well, that's a good point. That could be pretty lonely if you show up and they're not playing. So,
Also, if you can punt, there's a chance you can get in for free at this point.
and that's also a very well taken point. So, if you wait to 2024, I'm sure you should contact the people at
The serious answer though is there'll be plenty of people on the We Are SC message board who will be looking to sell tickets. So
Good
that would
point.
be the first place to look.
Good point. Question 2 from Merlin for SC in Gig Harbor, Washington. Is there a fall practice schedule yet, or does it even matter? As in, will they all be closed? Answer?
There is a fall practice schedule, and they will not all be closed. A good chunk of them will be closed. I think I counted, we can be at 7 true fall camp practices, and it's going to be kind of the same stuff that we were able to get in the spring. It's, we're there for stretching and individual stuff, photos, videos. We go out, and then we can come back to do interviews, coaches and players based on what day it is. Once the season starts, again, the same kind of stuff. Tuesday, Wednesday, again, kind of the first part of practice, and then with coaches and players. Afterward, no, we're not gonna be able to watch an entire practice and tell you, this guy made this many catches and this guy looked great that we saw, with our own eyes, that kind of thing. We will be able to see kind of, who's suited up and who's doing what kind of individually. But no, there won't be kind of the, the deep cuts from practice observations this year.
I thought it was an ambiguous question, but a good question. In terms of the public, they're closed.
Yeah.
Okay, they're closed. In terms of the schedule, yeah, it's out. And Eric just explained exactly what the schedule is. So if you're thinking of coming down from Gig Harbor, Washington to spend a weekend at USC or a week, you're not gonna be able to.
You better know somebody.
You better know somebody, absolutely.
Also,
And-
if you can punt, come down for a practice.
We cannot
Only if her name is
emphasize.
Atticus. Listen, we're not going to settle just for any old punter. We have to have the.
Yes.
Well, just call the front office at SC and say your name is Atticus and see how far it takes you.
That'll get you in.
Final question, number 3 from Romy, a loyal viewer and listener from Huntington Beach, California. For what reason would Lincoln want to keep the press away and basically uninformed? Could he not use the media to aid the image? Response?
Almost every college coach keeps the media away. Lincoln Riley's not unusual that way. They almost all do it. And Lincoln Riley knows that he has to do one thing to make people happy. He has to win football games. That's it. It's all he cares about. And it's not like people are so upset that they can't get in practices that they're not going to buy tickets. USC has been dying for a football team that's decent for some time. They're going to get one this year. They're going to show up and be happy. Lincoln Riley's going to win 10 games, and it doesn't really matter if people get into practices or not. That's the truth, whether we like it or not.
I totally agree with that. I think it's all about what happens on Saturdays or a Friday night. People won't care about the media not getting in, but just remember when you don't get the reports that you would like to get, we have explained why that happens. But we know that if you follow wearesc.com, this I can promise you, nobody covers the walk-up ramp from the 3rd floor of the John McKay Center to the practice field entrance at Goo Gate than our Marc Kulkin. He will tell you if someone's wearing a new earring on his left ear, or who's got a boot on their right leg, or who went the wrong direction to try to get into practice gate. That I promise you, it'll happen.
That's quite a sales job there. I can't wait to go read those.
Absolutely. It's.
I think the thing with Lincoln too is like he's got a track record. He does not want opponents to have anything. I mean anything. There was a big dust up at Oklahoma when the student paper saw a practice reps at who was taking first team quarterback snaps from a building, and it shut the whole school down for a little bit. So he's going to go out of his way to make sure that opponents don't have anything. And in terms of aiding the image, This guy left Oklahoma and took over a 4-8 program, and any story, especially out of Los Angeles, is about how amazing he is and how good this team's going to be, and people want them ranked in the top 10 in the country. There's not a lot to aid the image at this point. I mean, they've done a good job at sort of putting the stories forward that they'd like out there and the narrative that they want out there. So again, being in the media and having access to maybe some of the stories that you'd like to write, that's not really the question here. It's why would he do it? And he's kind of shown that USC can shape a lot of the narrative this way.
Erik, I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts on the media meet and greet the day before? What do you think's behind that?
There's been a few things. Again, I think if it was purely up to Lincoln Riley when he came over here, things would not have gone for the media the way they've been. I think he's been sort of bending and understanding to what a place like USC necessitates, both for the media because of the spotlight on it, but also for the players. If you're going to play at USC, you need to be on camera. You need to have your voice out there. You can't just sit on the bench, put a helmet on, go out for a few plays. And then, at Oklahoma, at some of these programs, I think you can do that. You come to USC to be in LA and to share some of that. And so I think he's been really understanding of that. And I think the more time, and you see the list of guys that are going to be at that media day, it's some big names, and it's guys that, hey, let's get this guy front and center. Let's get him some publicity, some stories about him. So I think that's part of that. I also think it feels pretty professional when you do something like that. Just a straight day for the media, just interviews. Here we go. Let's kick off camp and that sort of thing. So again, that's not something that we've seen before, and I don't know if it's something that he did at Oklahoma, but definitely kind of noteworthy that they're doing that this year.
That's why I asked. It's something I don't think he's done that before at Oklahoma, and I don't remember that happening at USC before. So I'm just, part of me is thinking maybe this is a feeling out process with the media to see, who they can trust, who they feel comfortable with, maybe to open things up later in the season.
You can trust me, Lincoln. If you want to have a one-on-one interview with me, let's do it. That'll get us decent ratings on We Are SC. We'll get like 8,000 views for that.
And his middle name is Atticus, and he can punt.
Perfect.
That's right. Well, a reminder, if you have a question or comments for our panel, go to either the We Are SC message boards and click on the thread that pertains to Inside the Trojans Huddle viewer or listener questions. Okay, long show. I think a lot of product in it. I think people hopefully you enjoyed it, learned a lot. So it's a wrap for Inside the Trojans Huddle. A big thank you to this week's panelists of the great Marc Kulkin, the great Chris Arledge, and the great Erik McKinney. And a special thank you to all of you for watching or listening to Inside the Trojans Huddle. Until next Tuesday, this is your host, Greg Katz, reminding you all to fight on, everybody.